Imagine stepping onto a pitch where the air is so thin that your lungs just start burning after a single sprint.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, the ground beneath your feet is actively sinking into an ancient lake bed.
Yeah.
You look up, and the stadium towering above you cost over $5 billion to dig out of the earth.
It's wild.
It is. And resting on your shoulders, hanging over every single pass you're about to make, is this invisible pressure of a $50 billion global wager. I mean, that isn't a scene from some science fiction movie. That is the actual tangible reality awaiting players at the 2026 World Cup.
It really is a scenario that completely shatters our traditional understanding of a sporting event, you know? Because we're used to boundaries. We are used to a highly controlled environment where the variables are known.
Right.
But what we're looking at here is an operational behemoth that just introduces extremes at every conceivable level. I mean, geographically, financially, and physiologically.
Yeah. Have you ever wondered what happens to the beautiful game when you stretch it to the absolute breaking point? Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are thrilled to have you with us for a highly anticipated, just massive, special World Cup 2026 edition of our show.
Absolutely.
And today we are embarking on a comprehensive journey through the largest World Cup in human history. For this special occasion, we are officially calling this the Black Mamba of soccer or football deep dive.
I love that. And, you know, the sheer volume of data required to map out this tournament is staggering. We're looking at a landscape involving 48 different nations.
48.
Yeah, 104 games and 16 host cities scattered across 3 massive countries and 4 distinct time zones. And all of that is crammed into just 39 days.
Which is exactly why we need to pause. Before we even take a conceptual step onto the pitch, we really have to credit the architect behind today's roadmap.
Oh.
A massive echoing shout out to Etienne Noumen.
Oh, absolutely.
Etienne is a software engineer, a highly passionate soccer dad from Canada, and just the brilliant researcher and producer who pulled together this absolute mountain of DBC sport coverage for us to dissect today.
He really did.
He essentially built the compass we're using to navigate this complete fire hose of information.
Yeah, and his curation of the BBC's stadium guides, the player profiles, and the historical rankings, it just gives us the perfect lens to understand not just what is happening, but why it matters.
Right.
Because the environment of 2026, it's going to dictate the narrative just as much as the players themselves.
Let's start exactly there, actually, the battleground. I mean, if you are a fan tuning in to watch England or Scotland, your team's fate might ultimately be sealed the moment the venue draw happens, like long before a ball is ever kicked.
For sure.
Because the geography of this tournament is just a brutal jigsaw puzzle.
The distances alone are extreme. I mean, you have some venues sitting 2,800 miles apart. But the real variable, the thing that really matters, is the microclimate. The BBC Sports Stadium Guide paints a stark picture of the physiological toll awaiting these squads. Take Monterrey in Mexico, for example. If a European team that's accustomed to temperate climates gets drawn to play there in June, they are walking into an absolute furnace. The average daily high is 34 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And a recent deadly heat wave in that exact region saw the mercury push past 40 degrees.
And playing in 40-degree heat isn't just uncomfortable. It fundamentally changes the tactics of football.
Exactly.
You literally cannot execute a high-pressing, heavy metal style of football for 90 minutes in a sauna. Your players would simply collapse. And Miami presents a similar, yet arguably worse, nightmare.
Yeah, because Miami introduces the humidity factor. So the average high is 31 degrees Celsius in June, but Hard Rock Stadium is an open-air venue with no roof.
Right.
To understand the impact of that, we really have to look at the data from the 2025 Club World Cup, which was held in the exact same condition.
Oh, right. That was brutal.
It was. Even when organizers pushed kickoffs back to 8 p.m. to try and mitigate the health risks, the ambient temperature was still sitting at 28 degrees Celsius, but with suffocating humidity.
So it doesn't even matter that the sun is down.
Exactly. It makes recovering between sprints incredibly difficult because the sweat doesn't evaporate to cool the body down.
Now, contrast that with the Pacific Northwest. Like, if you get drawn to play in Vancouver at BC Place, the average external high is a beautiful 20 degrees Celsius.
It's perfect.
Yeah. In Seattle at Lumen Field, it's 22 degrees. You go from a literal swamp to perfect, crisp autumnal playing conditions. The physical advantage gained by a team placed in the Northwest over a team slogging through the Miami humidity is enormous.
It really is an unfair advantage in a way, but heat and humidity are familiar foes in football. Altitude, though, that introduces a completely different set of physics.
Oh, man.
And this brings us to Mexico City and Guadalajara. The Estadio Azteca in Mexico City sits at an elevation of 2,200 meters.
That is over 7,200 feet.
Yeah, and at that altitude, the air density is significantly reduced. And this does two things. First, obviously, it starves the muscles of oxygen, testing cardiovascular stamina in a way that sea-level training simply cannot prepare you for.
Right, your lungs are just screaming.
Exactly. But secondly, and this is where it gets fascinating from a mechanical standpoint, it alters the aerodynamics of the ball. Less air density means less friction and drag acting on the ball as it travels through the air.
So the ball literally moves faster and flies further.
It does.
Like a long pass or a shot from outside the box is going to behave differently than it does in London or Madrid. Goalkeepers are going to have to recalibrate their entire sense of timing because the ball will arrive fractions of a second earlier than their muscle memory expects.
And beyond the physics of the air, the Azteca has a geographical quirk that is just almost unbelievable. The city of Mexico is actively sinking by up to 40 centimeters a year.
The history behind this is mind-blowing.
It really is.
Because the city was built on the soft clay bed of an ancient lake. It was the site of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. And when the Spanish conquered it, they drained the lake.
Right.
Now, centuries of water extraction from the aquifers below have caused the clay to compress. So these players will be contesting the most important matches of their lives in a thin air environment, inside a historic stadium situated in a metropolis that is literally subsiding into the earth.
It just adds an almost mythical layer to the venue. And, well, Guadalajara isn't far behind in the dramatic setting department either. The Estadio Akron sits at over 1,600 meters in altitude.
Okay.
And the architecture itself leans into the extreme environment. The stadium is actually designed to mimic a volcano.
A volcano?
Yeah, it's built on an artificial hill, and it features red seating in the bowl to evoke lava within a crater, and then it has this white sweeping roof structure designed to look like a cloud resting over the peak.
Wow, so you have these natural and architectural extremes. But let's look at the sheer financial muscle flex to build the newer venues.
Yeah.
Specifically, the Los Angeles Stadium in Inglewood.
Yes.
Now, a quick point of order based on the BBC Guy's visa. FIFA maintains strict rules about dropping corporate sponsor names during the tournament. So fans who are used to calling it SoFi Stadium are going to have to adjust to just calling it Los Angeles Stadium.
Right. Well, whatever you call it, the engineering is unprecedented. It carries a reported price tag of $5.5 billion.
Wait. $5.5 billion?
Yes, making it comfortably the most expensive stadium ever constructed in human history.
$5.5 billion for a single venue. That is staggering.
And you see every penny of that when you look at the constraints they had to overcome. It is a pioneering indoor-outdoor hybrid structure, and it's covered by this massive translucent canopy spanning 90,000 square meters.
Wow.
And because Los Angeles is an active seismic zone, that entire canopy is held up by 37 earthquake-resistant columns. But the real engineering marvel is underneath it.
The excavation, right? This is where the logistics get crazy.
Yeah.
Because the stadium is located just 3 miles from Los Angeles International Airport, so they ran into severe building height restrictions enforced by the Federal Aviation Administration.
Right, the FAA.
They physically could not build the stadium high enough to hold 70,000 people without intruding into the flight paths.
So their solution was to dig. They excavated more than 5 million cubic meters of earth from the site. They set the actual playing pitch 30 meters below ground level.
So it's basically an underground bunker.
Exactly. When you enter the stadium at street level, you are essentially at the top of the upper bowl, and you have to descend deep into the earth to reach the field. And hovering directly above that subterranean pitch is the infinity screen.
Oh, that thing is massive.
It's an oval-shaped, double-sided 4K video board that weighs nearly 1,000 tons.
I mean, it sounds less like a football stadium and more like a subterranean command center. And speaking of sci-fi comparisons, the Dallas venue, AT&T Stadium, is explicitly compared in the sources to the Death Star from Star Wars.
It really is.
It's a $1.2 billion marvel, but just like the Death Star, it features a singular, glaring structural flaw.
Yeah, the orientation of the building and the massive glass windows at one end of the stadium create a severe lighting issue. During certain times of the day, specifically as the sun sets, blinding, unfiltered sunlight streams directly across the pitch.
It completely dazzles the players.
It does.
Like if you are a winger trying to track a cross or a goalkeeper trying to read the spin on a shot, and you are staring directly into a focused beam of Texas sunlight, you are functionally blind.
Oh, completely.
And the most absurd part is the politics of the building. The owner, Jerry Jones, notoriously refuses to install or use curtains to block the glare.
Right.
You have a billion-dollar Death Star, and the fatal flaw is a stubborn refusal to buy blinds.
It's crazy. It creates such an unpredictable variable on the pitch. But, that lighting issue pales in comparison to the most foundational, controversial, logistical challenge of this entire tournament. The surface the players are actually running on.
Oh, the turf war.
Exactly. Of the 16 venues selected, 8 normally operate with artificial turf surfaces. We are talking about Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, New Jersey, Seattle, and Vancouver.
Okay.
But FIFA regulations are absolute World Cup matches must be played on natural grass.
So they have to retrofit 8 massive NFL and MLS stadiums with temporary grass pitches just for the duration of the tournament.
Right.
And look at the historical data. This is a terrifying prospect for the players' safety and the quality of the game.
It is, because the biomechanics of playing on temporary grass layered over concrete or artificial turf are highly problematic.
How so?
Well, a natural permanent pitch has a deep root system. When a player plants their cleat to make a sharp turn, the soil gives way just enough to absorb the kinetic energy, allowing the cleat to release. But temporary trays of grass often lack that deep interlocking root structure. They are shallow.
Which means they dry out incredibly fast. We saw exactly how this fails during the 2025 Club World Cup. Seattle had to lay down a temporary pitch just 10 days before the tournament started. And it was an unmitigated disaster.
It really was.
The surface couldn't retain moisture. Paris Saint-Germain's manager, Luis Enrique, publicly blasted the conditions, complaining that the hardness of the surface made the ball, quote, bounce like a rabbit.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, you cannot play elite, precise, one-touch football on a surface that acts like a trampoline.
You can't. FIFA has pledged to rectify this by installing the temporary pitches months in advance and building in sophisticated irrigation systems. But the anxiety among players is palpable, particularly regarding the New York-New Jersey stadium, MetLife Stadium, which is slated to host the actual World Cup final.
Because MetLife has a notoriously grim reputation.
It does. Among NFL players, there is a widely discussed concept known as the MetLife curse. The existing artificial turf there is routinely blamed for severe non-contact injuries. Players like Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors have suffered devastating ACL tears on that exact field. The grip of artificial turf doesn't release the cleat, so when the knee twists, the joint absorbs the entire rotational force, tearing the ligament.
Ouch.
The players have been begging for a permanent natural grass field, but for the World Cup, they are only getting a temporary grass overlay.
Wait, put those pieces together for a second. If you were flying elite athletes thousands of miles across 4 different time zones, dragging them from 20-degree breezes to 40-degree heat waves, asking them to recalibrate their lungs for high altitude, and putting them on unstable, potentially dangerous temporary grass. Are we just sacrificing the actual football?
It's a huge question.
The risk of a disjointed, injury-riddled tournament seems massive.
That tension is the defining undercurrent of 2026. Because while the physical variables threaten the product on the pitch, there is an invisible financial variable driving the sheer scale of the event. And it dwarfs anything we have ever seen.
The $50 billion wager.
Yeah. According to a forecast by the financial services firm Macquarie, the 2026 World Cup is projected to be the single biggest betting event in human history. They are projecting $50 billion in wagers.
To contextualize that, during the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, the global handle was around $35 billion.
Right.
A $15 billion jump in 4 years is staggering. What is the mechanism behind that explosion?
It's a combination of inventory and shifting legal landscapes. First, the expansion. Moving from a 32-team format to a 48-team format increases the total number of matches from 64 to 104.
So more games to bet on.
Exactly. That is an enormous influx of new inventory for bookmakers to offer odds on. Second, the time zones in North America are incredibly favorable for a massive global television audience, overlapping well with prime time in various lucrative markets.
But the real engine of that $15 billion jump is the United States domestic market.
Precisely. The legislation has completely shifted. During the 2022 World Cup, only about 40% of the U.S. population lived in a state with legal sports betting. By 2026, that number is expected to hit 65%. This is the very first time a men's World Cup aligns with a legally open, highly accessible American sports betting market.
And the BBC sources highlight a fierce, very necessary debate about the ethics of strapping a betting industry of that magnitude to a sporting event. We really have to look at both sides of this argument impartially for you. On one hand, you have serious warnings from gambling awareness groups.
Right. Les Burnell, the national director of Stop Predatory Gambling, articulated the concern sharply. He warned that this saturation of betting could lead hundreds of thousands of people into life-changing debt. The core of his argument is that the business model inherently relies on addicted gamblers.
And the data backs up that concern. The sources cite a UK study revealing that a staggering 79% of gambling company winnings actually came from just the top 10% of spenders.
Wow.
Yeah, individuals who are wagering over £5,600 a year. Furthermore, campaigners point out the specific mechanical trap of modern betting apps cross-promotion.
Oh, that's a big one.
A fan might download an app just to place a $5 bet on Mexico to win a group game. But once they're in the ecosystem, they're bombarded with push notifications and marketing for highly addictive, rapid-fire casino games like digital slots or roulette.
The industry, however, mounts a robust defense of the regulated model. The UK's Betting and Gaming Council argues that because the demand for sports betting exists universally, a strictly regulated legal market is the only way to protect consumers.
Because the alternative is the black market.
Exactly. They point out that regulated operators are required to implement safeguards. Things like strict age verification checks, mandatory deposit limits, cooling-off periods, self-exclusion schemes, and algorithmic monitoring to detect problem gambling patterns.
Right.
Their stance is that driving betting underground to unregulated offshore operators strips away every single one of those safety nets, leaving vulnerable people entirely exposed.
It is a massive, complex ecosystem hanging over every single match. The pressure of a $50 billion economy is heavy. But for the players stepping onto the pitch, there is a weight that is far more intimate and far more intimidating.
For sure.
The weight of history.
Yeah.
I mean, to understand what today's players are chasing on that temporary grass, we have to look backward. We must understand the ghosts they are trying to emulate.
The mythology of the World Cup is built on individual legends. The BBC Sports senior journalist Alex Bysouth took on the incredibly daunting task of ranking the top 10 World Cup legends of all time.
Good luck with that.
Right. Out of the thousands of players who have graced the pitch over the last century, narrowing it down to 10 requires absolute ruthlessness.
You realize how elite this list is when you look at the titans who didn't even make the cut. The honorable mentions are a who's who of football royalty. You have Eusébio, the Portuguese icon who lit up the 1966 tournament.
Incredible player.
You have Gerd Müller, the German striker who was an absolute machine in front of goal.
Oh.
Johan Cruyff, the Dutch visionary, who essentially invented the modern geometry of the sport with total football.
And perhaps the most startling omission is Miroslav Klose of Germany. He didn't make the top 10. He landed just outside at number 11.
Which is wild, because Miroslav Klose is literally the all-time leading goal scorer in the entire history of the Men's World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
He scored 16 goals across 4 tournaments. If the man who holds the ultimate statistical record isn't in the top 10, it tells you that World Cup mythology isn't just about math. It's about moments. It's about narrative.
That narrative focus shapes the entire top 10. We can group these legends by the specific kind of history they authored. Let's look at numbers 10 and 6, the members of the most exclusive goal-scoring club in history, the final hat-trick.
Okay, Sir Geoff Hurst of England sits at number 10. His entire legacy is tethered to the 1966 final at Wembley Stadium, where England faced West Germany. Prior to 2022, he was the only man to ever score 3 goals in a World Cup final. But the most compelling part of his story isn't the goals. It's the fact that he was essentially an understudy.
It is a phenomenal detail. England's star striker heading into that tournament was Jimmy Greaves, a prolific, world-class forward. But Greaves suffered a deep gash to his leg during the group stages.
Oh, brutal timing.
So the manager, Sir Alf Ramsey, had to turn to Hurst, who had only made his international debut a few months prior. When Greaves recovered in time for the final, the entire country and the press expected him to be reinstated. But Ramsey stuck with the hot hand. He kept Hurst in the lineup.
And Hurst repays that faith with a hat-trick to win England their first, and still only, World Cup trophy. Talk about seizing a fleeting opportunity.
Absolutely.
The only other man to touch that specific piece of history is Kylian Mbappé of France, who sits at number 6.
What is remarkable about Mbappé is that he is the only active player in this tier of the list. He is still in his mid-20s, and his resume is already terrifying.
It's absurd.
In 2018, at just 19 years old, he announced himself by becoming the first teenager since Pelé to score twice in a knockout game and the first since Pelé to score in the final as France lifted the trophy.
But his inclusion at number 6 is really cemented by the 2022 final against Argentina. He achieved what Hurst did him out. He scored a hat-trick in the biggest game on earth, including a scintillating, technically perfect volley under unimaginable pressure.
Oh, that volley.
And yet the tragedy of that performance is that he ended up on the losing side after the penalty shootout.
Moving from the goal scorers to the architects of the pitch, we look at players who redefine their positions. At number 9 is Cafu, the legendary Brazilian fullback.
Okay.
Cafu holds a record that speaks to unyielding consistency and longevity. He is the only man in history to play in 3 successive World Cup finals.
He came off the bench as a substitute in 1994 when Brazil beat Italy in a tense penalty shootout. He was a crucial part of the team that suffered a mysterious collapse against France in the 1998 final. And then he captained the squad to absolute redemption in 2002.
Yes, he did.
I love the human element the BBC highlighted from that 2002 victory. As he stood on the podium, holding the iconic gold trophy, he was wearing a yellow shirt with 100% Jardim Irene scrawled across it in black marker.
I remember seeing that.
It was a raw, beautiful tribute to the impoverished favela in Sao Paulo where he learned to play. He conquered the world but made sure everyone knew exactly where he came from.
That level of defensive and transitional dominance is shared by the man at number 5, Franz Beckenbauer of West Germany, their Kaiser. Beckenbauer essentially invented the role of the modern attacking sweeper, the libero.
He was a defender who didn't just destroy attacks, he initiated them.
Exactly. His defining World Cup moment as a player was the 1974 final. He was tasked with neutralizing Johan Cruyff and the mesmerizing Dutch total football system.
A huge task.
And Beckenbauer's elegant, intelligent marshalling of the defense completely stifled the Netherlands, leading West Germany to the title. And he belongs to an elite club of his own. After suffering defeat as a manager in the 1986 final, he returned in 1990 to manage West Germany to the trophy, becoming one of the very few to win it as both captain and coach.
The World Cup is also the ultimate stage for rewriting a tragic script. Let's look at the redemption arcs. Paolo Rossi of Italy comes in at number 8. His story is almost cinematic.
Heading into the 1982 tournament in Spain, Rossi was a pariah. He had just returned from a 2-year ban from football due to his alleged involvement in the Tortonero match-fixing scandal.
Which he denied, right?
Yeah, a charge he vehemently denied until his death. He arrived at the tournament out of form, failing to score a single goal in the first group stage.
But then, in the second group stage, Italy faces a Brazilian team that many consider one of the greatest sides to never win a World Cup. A team playing pure, joyous football.
Oh, the 1982 Brazil side was legendary.
And Rossi just erupts. He scores a hat-trick to eliminate Brazil 3-2. He follows it up with 2 goals in the semifinal against Poland. Then he scores the crucial opening goal in the final against West Germany.
Unbelievable.
He went from a disgraced, banned player to winning the Golden Boot, the Golden Ball, and the World Player of the Year in the span of a few weeks.
A very similar dramatic resurrection belongs to Ronaldo of Brazil, a fenomeno, who sits at number 3. His arc spans 3 tournaments. He went to the 1994 World Cup as a 17-year-old prodigy, but didn't play a single minute.
Right.
By 1998, he was the most fearsome striker on the planet. He scored 4 goals and dragged Brazil to the final against host nation France.
But then, the afternoon of the final, the mystery happens. Ronaldo suffers a sudden, unexplained convulsive seizure in his hotel room. His name is initially left off the team sheet.
Yeah, the confusion was crazy.
He insists on playing at the last minute, but he is visibly a ghost of himself on the pitch, and Brazil is dismantled by France.
And the tragedy deepens. In the years following that final, Ronaldo suffers catastrophic, career-threatening ruptures to the patellar tendon in his right knee. His explosive pace, the very thing that made him a phenomenon, is compromised.
People thought he was done.
There were massive doubts about whether he should even be in the squad for the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea.
But he goes. And he doesn't just play, he dominates. He scores 8 goals in the tournament. And in the final against Germany, he scores both goals in a 2-0 victory, completely banishing the agonizing ghosts of 1998. It is one of the greatest testaments to physical and mental resilience in sports history.
But the World Cup also immortalizes flawed genius, the players whose brilliance was intertwined with volatility. At number 7, we have Zinedine Zidane.
Zidane is fascinating because he became the face of a modern, multicultural France. Raised in a tough neighborhood in Marseille by Algerian immigrant parents, his artistry united a fractured nation in 1998. He scored 2 towering headers against Brazil in the final to win it on home soil.
But the expert lens must always acknowledge his duality. Zidane played the game on an emotional razor's edge. Everyone remembers the shocking end to his career, the infamous headbutt on Italy's Marco Materazzi in the 2006 final, which saw him sent off in his last ever match.
Of course.
But people often gloss over the fact that even during that glorious 1998 run, he stomped on an opponent in the group stages against Saudi Arabia and was suspended for 2 matches. His genius was inextricably linked to a simmering rage.
Which is the perfect transition to number 2, Diego Maradona of Argentina. The BBC source perfectly describes him as, quote, pure box office.
That's the only way to describe him.
If you want to understand Maradona, you only need to watch the 1986 quarterfinal against England in the searing heat of the Azteca Stadium. It completes his entire existence in the span of 4 minutes.
The context is crucial. The match carried the heavy geopolitical baggage of the Falklands War. The tension was immense, and Maradona delivers 2 moments that defy belief. First, the infamy. He challenges the English goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, for a high ball. Shilton has an 8-inch height advantage and the use of his hands, but Maradona cunningly punches the ball into the net. The referee misses it.
The hand of God.
The hand of God is born. It is an act of supreme, unapologetic deception.
But before the outrage can even settle, mere minutes later, he delivers the divine. He picks up the ball deep in his own half, and he starts running. He embarks on a daring, weaving dribble, spinning away from 2 midfielders, accelerating past 2 defenders who are left helplessly swatting at him, skipping past the goalkeeper and sliding the ball home.
It was poetry.
He essentially velcroed the English defense to the Mexican turf. It is universally recognized as the goal of the century. He finished that 1986 tournament with 5 goals and 5 assists, effectively dragging a good but not great Argentine team to the title through sheer force of will.
That level of individual dominance is only surpassed by 2 men who transcend the sport entirely. At number 4, we have Lionel Messi. For over a decade, Messi's legacy carried an asterisk. He had won everything at the club level, but the narrative insisted he couldn't replicate Maradona's feat of winning the World Cup for Argentina.
The 2022 tournament in Qatar looked like it was going to be another heartbreak. They suffered a shocking, historic, upset defeat to Saudi Arabia in their very first match. The pressure was suffocating.
Oh, you could feel it.
But then, Messi flipped a switch and authored a Hollywood script. Facing elimination against Mexico, he scores a brilliant strike from outside the box and provides an assist. He scores in the round of 16. He scores a penalty and provides a physics-defying no-look pass against the Netherlands. He dominates Croatia.
And in the final against France, in what many consider the greatest match ever played, he scores twice and converts his shootout penalty. At 35 years old, he orchestrated the entire tournament, finally ending his drought and securing his place in the pantheon.
But the absolute peak of that pantheon, the undisputed king at number 1, is Pelé of Brazil.
He is the standard against which all greatness is measured. Pelé is the only man in the history of the sport to win 3 World Cups, 1958, 1962, and 1970.
And the origins of his legend are deeply poetic. In 1950, Brazil hosted the World Cup and suffered a traumatic defeat to Uruguay at the Maracanã Stadium, an event known as the Maracanazo. The country wept.
It was a national tragedy.
A 9-year-old Pelé saw his father crying and famously promised him, "Don't cry, Dad, I'll win the World Cup for you." 8 years later, at just 17 years old, he fulfills that promise in Sweden. He scores a hat-trick against France in the semifinal and 2 goals in the final against the hosts.
But his career also tested his endurance. By 1966, he was targeted relentlessly. The tackling he endured in England was so brutal and cynical that he actually vowed never to play in a World Cup again. He felt the beautiful game was being destroyed by violence.
Thankfully, he changed his mind for 1970 in Mexico. That 1970 Brazilian team is widely considered the greatest collective side ever assembled. Pelé, older, wiser, and playing with profound joy, orchestrated a masterpiece.
That final against Italy.
Yeah, in the final against Italy, he scored a towering header for the first goal and laid off a perfectly weighted blind pass for Carlos Alberto to smash home the final goal in a 4-1 thrashing.
You know, arguing over whether Messi, Maradona, or Pelé is the absolute best is a futile exercise. The rules change, the ball changes, the medical science changes.
It's exactly like arguing over the greatest era of music. You can't objectively prove that the 60s were better than the 90s using math. But the specific details, Pelé making a childhood promise to his weeping father, or Maradona leaving defenders glued to the grass in Mexico, those details are the chords that make the songs legendary.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The history is written in stone, but the 2026 tournament isn't about the ghosts. It is about the kids who are stepping onto the pitch trying to haunt those same stadiums next.
Yes. Let's pivot from the legends to the future. The BBC compiled an incredibly detailed scouting report of 20 fresh faces to watch, specifically focusing on players outside the massive media bubbles of the English Premier League and Scottish Premiership. These are the breakout candidates. And we have to start by looking at the sheer youth, the teenage phenoms.
The level of responsibility placed on these young players is staggering. Take Gilberto Mora of Mexico. He is only 17 years old, currently playing his club football for Tijuana in Liga MX.
The Spanish press gave him the nickname Craquito, which translates to Little Maestro, and you can see why. He is already the youngest goal scorer in the history of the Mexican top flight, finding the net when he was just 15 years old.
But consider the psychological weight of his situation. As the youngest player slated for this tournament, he could be walking out of the tunnel at the historic Azteca Stadium, the same stadium where Pele and Maradona cemented their legacies, carrying the hopes of 130 million Mexican fans on home soil.
Talk about pressure.
That requires an elite, almost unnatural level of compartmentalization. Though the BBC notes his path to the starting 11 isn't guaranteed, especially since Spanish-born midfielder Alvaro Fidalgo recently decided to switch allegiances and represent Mexico, adding fierce competition for a spot.
And then we have a player who embodies a completely different kind of intelligence. Ayoub Bouadi from Morocco. He is 18 years old, plying his trade for Lille in the French league. And his nickname is literally Einstein.
I find his profile fascinating because it highlights the dual lives these young athletes lead. He is nicknamed Einstein not just for his pitch geometry, but because he is actively studying for a university degree in mathematics.
That's amazing.
And you can see that analytical brain working when he plays. He operates as a deep-lying number 6.
Let's explain that role for the listener. What exactly is a deep-lying number 6?
In modern tactics, it's often part of a double pivot, 2 midfielders who sit just in front of the defensive line. Their job is complex. They have to break up opposition attacks, but more importantly, they are the metronome of the team.
The metronome.
Yeah, they receive the ball under immense pressure near their own penalty area and have to calculate the precise angle and speed of a pass to transition the team into an attack. Bouadi does this with the composure of a veteran. He made his European club debut just 3 days after turning 16.
And securing his allegiance was a massive geopolitical coup for Morocco. He originally played for the France under-21 squad, but ultimately chose to represent the Moroccan senior team. Another young star making absolute waves is Ibrahim Maza of Algeria. He's a 20-year-old attacking midfielder playing in Germany for Bayer Leverkusen.
His nickname carries a heavy burden, Maradona.
Naturally.
It's an obvious nod to Diego Maradona because Maza possesses this incredibly technical, skillful, close-control style of play. He thrives in those chaotic, tight spaces between the opposition's midfield and defensive lines. In Algeria, the expectations are sky-high, with pundits already positioning him as the natural heir to Riyad Mahrez, who has been the poster boy of Algerian football for the last decade.
But the tournament isn't just won by midfielders analyzing angles. It is won by the guys tasked with putting the ball in the back of the net. Let's shift our focus to the goal-scoring threats. We have to talk about Ricardo Pepi of the United States. He's 23, currently playing for PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands.
Pepi is an anomaly heading into this tournament. At the club level, he was lethal, banging in 19 goals to help PSV secure the Dutch league title.
Right.
But curiously, he found himself somewhat sidelined at the international level, barely featuring for the U.S. national team between late 2024 and early 2026. Despite that lack of recent international minutes, he remains the most potent, natural finisher the joint hosts possess.
And he brings a fantastic pop culture flair to the pitch. When he scores, he celebrates by mimicking a character from the Japanese anime Naruto. I love seeing that kind of personality.
It's great.
Staying in North America, Mexico has another striking option in Armando Gonzalez. He is 23 years old and plays for Chivas.
His nickname is a bit more grounded than Einstein or Maradona. They call him La Hormiga, which translates to the ant.
Because, according to the BBC, he had an intense childhood fear of insects.
It stuck with him. But on the pitch, he is fearless. He scored 25 goals in a single season for Guadalajara's youth setup. But what makes his profile really compelling is his mentorship.
Oh, yeah.
As he transitioned to the senior team, he learned directly under the tutelage of Javier Chicharito Hernandez, the legendary former Manchester United and Real Madrid striker who returned to Chivas to finish his career. The BBC experts suggest that with Chicharito's guidance on movement inside the penalty area, Gonzalez is perfectly primed to be the ultimate super sub for Mexico, coming off the bench to poach crucial goals against tired legs.
Moving our scouting report over to the African contingent, we find Yan Diomande of the Ivory Coast. He's a 19-year-old winger tearing up the German league with RB Leipzig, and the numbers attached to his name are astronomical. Leipzig reportedly values him at over $112 million.
That valuation is a testament to his sheer output. He was named the Bundesliga Rookie of the Season after registering 21 goal contributions, goals and assists combined in just 33 league appearances. He possesses explosive pace and elite decision-making in the final third. And there's a fun geographical quirk that makes this World Cup special for him. After moving from the Ivory Coast, he actually lived in Florida for 3 years, starting at age 15. So when he steps onto the pitch in these North American stadiums, he will be experiencing a bit of a homecoming.
The talent pool identified in this report is incredibly deep across all regions. How about Johan Manzambi of Switzerland? He's a 20-year-old attacking midfielder playing for SC Freiburg.
Manzambi has a bizarre origin story. Growing up, he had no interest in scoring goals. He wanted to be a goalkeeper, explicitly idolizing the German sweeper keeper, Manuel Neuer.
That's funny.
Somewhere along the line, coaches realized his footwork and vision were too good to waste between the posts. Now he is an attacking menace. He was recently named UEFA's Europa League Revelation of the Season, highlighted by a thunderous wonder strike against Braga in the semifinal. Switzerland has a great track record of thrusting young talent onto the global stage. Think of players like Breel Embolo or Dan Ndoye, and Manzambi is clearly the next link in that chain.
We also have Guissemi Yassine of Morocco, a 20-year-old right winger currently at Strasbourg in France. He was heavily scouted by Barcelona before Strasbourg swooped in and secured his signature for €7 million. He already proved he can handle tournament pressure by starring at the Under-20 World Cup, where he scored twice and provided 3 assists.
But we can't ignore the defensive prodigies. Defending at the international level requires immense maturity, which makes teenagers playing center back so rare.
Very rare.
Look at Lucas Harrington of Australia. He's an 18-year-old central defender currently playing in MLS for the Colorado Rapids. He just made history by becoming the youngest player to ever be selected in an Australian World Cup squad across all 7 of their tournament appearances.
And joining him in the teenage defensive ranks is Luka Vuskovic of Croatia, 19 years old. Tottenham Hotspur identified his potential early, paying around £12 million for him back in 2025.
His development path is fascinating. He made his professional debut for Hajduk Split in Croatia at the absurd age of 16. Tottenham bought him and immediately loaned him out to gain physical experience.
Right, sending him off to toughen up.
Exactly. He went to Westerlo in Belgium and then to Hamburg in the grueling German 2nd Division. He didn't just survive, he thrived. He established himself as a physically commanding central defender who was also lethal on set pieces, scoring 6 goals during his loan spells. He is expected to return to London after the World Cup and demand first-team football in the Premier League.
The narratives just keep unfolding. You have Kanu Uzun, a brilliant 20-year-old midfielder at Eintracht Frankfurt, or Kerimilaj Begovic, an 18-year-old winger for Red Bull Salzburg, playing for Bosnia-Herzegovina, who showed ice in his veins by scoring the winning penalty in their playoff semi-final shootout against Wales. But when you step back and look at the BBC's list of 20 players as a whole, a massive geopolitical trend emerges.
Absolutely. The defining theme of modern international football is fluidity. The concept of dual nationality and shifting allegiances is more prominent now than at any point in the sport's history.
Right.
Globalization and migration patterns mean players frequently hold deep, legitimate ties to multiple nations.
We already saw how Ayoub Bouadi shifted his allegiance from the French youth system to the Moroccan senior team. But the list is full of these cross-cultural stories. Look at Nico Paz. He was born in Spain. He plays his club football in Italy for Como, under the management of Cesc Fabregas.
Right.
Yet he wears the blue and white stripes of Argentina. Why? Because his father, Pablo Paz, was an Argentine international who played in the 1998 World Cup.
We also see movement within North America. Brian Gutierrez is a 22-year-old midfielder who was born and raised in Illinois. He was deeply embedded in the U.S. system, actually earning 2 caps for the senior United States national team in 2025.
Oh, wow.
But FIFA rules allow for 1 switch under certain conditions, and Gutierrez officially filed to change his allegiance to Mexico, honoring the heritage of his parents. He now plays his club football for Chivas.
And it spans the globe. Alessandro Cercati is a highly rated center back for Parma in Italy. He was a former Italy youth international. But because his family emigrated to Australia when he was an infant, he felt a deeper connection there, and now he is a towering presence for the Socceroos.
International football is essentially mirroring the club transfer market. Nations are actively recruiting, scouting, and pitching projects to dual national players, trying to convince them to commit their international futures. It completely changes the talent acquisition landscape.
And these young players, whether they are playing for their birth nation or their parents' homeland, do not play in a vacuum. They are stepping into a tournament representing 48 distinct, wildly different nations. With the tournament expanding from 32 teams to 48 for the very first time, the field is wider, weirder, and more wonderful than ever. Let's pivot to our comprehensive team overview.
To understand how these 48 teams stack up against each other, we have to look at the seeding mechanism. Since 2018, FIFA abandoned their old, easily manipulated ranking system and adopted the ELO rating system.
The exact same mathematical system used to rank grandmasters in chess. The BBC article broke down the formula, and the mechanics of it are genuinely fascinating. It's not a simple tally of wins and losses.
No, it is a highly dynamic algorithm designed to measure relative strength. The core equation is P equals P before plus I times W minus W.
Okay, let's translate that algebra into actual football insight for the listener.
The easiest way to understand ELO is to view every match as a zero-sum wager of prestige. If a chess grandmaster plays a complete novice and wins, the grandmaster proves nothing we didn't already know. They gain almost 0 points.
Right.
But if the novice somehow checks the grandmaster, they steal a massive amount of the grandmaster's rating points because the result was highly unexpected.
So applied to football, P before is your current score. I is that importance of the match. A friendly against a neighbor might have an importance coefficient of 5, while a World Cup quarterfinal has a coefficient of 60.
Exactly.
W is what actually happens on the pitch, 1 point for a win, 0.5 for a draw. And W is the expected result calculated by the algorithm based on the gap between the two teams' ratings.
Exactly. So if first-ranked France beats 85th-ranked New Zealand in a friendly, France gains almost no points. The algorithm expected a blowout. But if an underdog team strings together wins against heavyweights and high-coefficient World Cup knockout matches, their ranking skyrockets instantly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And looking at the field heading into 2026, the system shows an incredibly dense concentration of quality P. 40 of the 48 teams competing are ranked in the top 48 of the world.
France sits at the absolute summit at number 1, and New Zealand enters as the lowest-ranked qualifier at number 85. Let's break down the field region by region, starting with the hosts and the North American contingent, CONCACAF. Because of their host status, Mexico, who is ranked 15th, the USA, ranked 16th, and Canada, ranked 30th, all automatically qualified without having to play the grueling qualification rounds.
The lack of competitive qualifiers can sometimes leave host nations undercooked, which is a concern. The pressure on the U.S. and Mexico from their domestic media is always suffocating, demanding deep knockout runs. But the narrative around Canada is arguably the most compelling.
Canada's golden generation.
Yes. They currently possess a squad brimming with talent, operating at the absolute highest levels of European club football players starring in the Champions League. Yet, there is a massive historical ghost they have to exercise.
What's that?
In their 3 previous World Cup appearances throughout history, Canada has never managed to win a single point. Their primary, desperate objective is to simply get a result on the board and finally reach the knockout stages.
Beyond the 3 hosts, the region offers some fantastic stories. Panama is back on the global stage, currently ranked an impressive 33rd. But we have to talk about the absolute romance of the debutantes, Curacao. Ranked 82nd in the world, they are officially the smallest nation by population to ever qualify for a men's World Cup.
It is a monumental achievement, a tiny island nation navigating the treacherous CONCACAF qualification waters, but their reward for this historic achievement is brutal.
Oh, it really is.
The draw placed them into a group featuring the 4-time world champions, Germany. It is a mammoth, almost impossible David versus Goliath task. But that collision of worlds is exactly what the expanded format was designed to create. We also see the joyous return of Haiti, ranked 83rd, who fought their way back to the World Cup for the first time since 1974.
52 years of waiting, finally over. Moving across the Atlantic, we hit the heavyweights. UEFA, the European Confederation, provides the largest block of teams and the highest concentration of elite talent.
The rankings reflect UEFA's dominance. You have France sitting at number 1, Spain at 2, England at 4, Portugal at 5, the Netherlands at 7, Belgium at 9, and Germany at 10.
That is just a gauntlet.
The depth is terrifying. Any one of those teams considers anything less than a semifinal appearance a total failure.
And the storylines attached to these giants are dripping with drama. Take England. They are now managed by a German tactician, Thomas Tuchel. His singular mandate is to end 60 years of agonizing herd dating back to Jeff Hurst's hat-trick in 1966.
Big pressure there.
Then you have France, sitting atop the rankings, aiming to reach an astonishing third successive final. The French media is billing this tournament as the last dance for their manager Didier Deschamps, who has steered the ship for 14 years.
Germany presents a fascinating psychological case study. Despite being 4-time winners and boasting incredible domestic talent, they are trapped in a bizarre, prolonged tournament slump. Astonishingly, they have not made it out of the group stages of a World Cup since they won the entire tournament in 2014.
Wow, that's wild.
Meanwhile, Spain enters the tournament radiating confidence, having perfected a suffocating possession-based style under Luis de la Fuente that won them the Euro 2024 title.
But Europe also delivers some brilliant, long-awaited returns. Norway has finally qualified for the first time since 1998. That means, after years of watching from the sidelines, the world finally gets to see the absolute cyborg that is Erling Haaland unleashed on the World Cup stage.
I can't wait for that.
And we cannot forget Scotland. The Tartan Army is back after a 28-year absence, and their mission is clear to survive the group stage and secure their first-ever knockout appearance.
If Europe is about concentrated wealth, South America, CONMEBOL, is about grueling, battle-tested resilience. Their qualification process is a brutal round-robin marathon spanning years. At the top of the pile, you have the defending champions, Argentina, ranked number 3.
Okay.
They arrived with a historic objective. They are trying to become only the 3rd team in the history of the sport, joining Italy in the 1930s and Brazil in the 1960s to successfully defend the trophy back-to-back.
And speaking of Brazil, ranked number 6, they are in a highly unusual state of crisis. They are 5-time champions, the spiritual home of the beautiful game, but they haven't lifted the trophy in 24 years.
A long drought.
The domestic pressure became so intense that they did something culturally drastic. They hired a legendary Italian head coach to try and instill the tactical discipline needed to end the drought.
The depth in South America means every match is a war of attrition. You have Uruguay, ranked 17th, managed by the brilliant, eccentric, and always turbulent tactician Marcelo Bielsa. Colombia, ranked 13th, returns with a vengeance after shockingly missing the 2022 tournament, coming in fresh off a deep run to the Copa America final.
Right.
But the team that tactical analysts are circling is Ecuador, ranked 23rd.
The dark horses. Explain why no one wants to play them.
Their defensive structure is essentially impenetrable. They finished 2nd in the brutal South American qualifying table, just behind Argentina, and they did that despite starting the campaign with a points deduction.
That's impressive.
Over the course of 18 grueling qualifying matches against the likes of Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, they conceded a total of only 5 goals. They are built to frustrate, absorb pressure, and win ugly, which is a highly effective tournament strategy.
Let's shift our gaze to Africa. The CAF Confederation is the biggest beneficiary of the 48-team expansion, bringing a record 10 teams to this tournament. It radically changes their footprint on the global stage.
Leading the charge, without question, is Morocco, currently ranked number 8 in the world. After their historic run in Qatar in 2022, where they became the first African nation to ever reach a World Cup semifinal, the narrative has shifted.
Yeah, they aren't underdogs anymore.
No one can patronize them with the dark horse label anymore. They possess elite talent playing at massive European clubs, and they are legitimate Tier 1 contenders for the trophy.
They're joined by the familiar heavyweights of the continent, Senegal, Ghana, Tunisia. We also get to see Mohamed Salah get another deserved shot on the big stage with Egypt. And Egypt carries a bizarre historical burden. Despite dominating African football for decades, they haven't reached the knockout stages of a World Cup since 1934.
That is a crazy stat.
But the expansion also opened the door for beautiful comeback stories. DR Congo is returning to the tournament for the first time in 52 years. arriving with the modest but massive goal of scoring their first ever World Cup goal and securing their first point.
And we have another phenomenal debutante story from Africa Cape Verde. Ranked 69th, the island nation known as the Blue Sharks executed a brilliant qualification campaign, managing to finish ahead of traditional, heavily resourced giants like Cameroon to secure their very first ticket to a global tournament.
Finally, we turn to Asia and Oceania, the AFC and OFC.
Asia provides two massive historic breakthrough narratives. Jordan, currently ranked 63rd, and Uzbekistan, ranked 50th, have both successfully navigated qualification to make their World Cup debuts.
The BBC coverage makes a fantastic point about Uzbekistan. Their qualification isn't a fluke. It is the culmination of a massive, heavily funded, long-term national development plan.
Exactly.
They suffered agonizing near misses in previous cycles, missing out by a single goal or a single point. Seeing that infrastructure investment finally pay off is a great story.
The expanded format also provided a lifeline for Iraq, ranked 57th. They qualified for the first time since 1986, but they did it the hard way. They had to survive a grueling, high-stakes intercontinental playoff match against Bolivia just to secure their spot.
A stressful way to get in.
For sure. They joined the traditional Asian powerhouses who regularly featured Japan, South Korea, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. And Qatar deserves a mention. After receiving an automatic bid as hosts in 2022, they have successfully proved their merit by qualifying outright for 2026.
And rounding out the 48 teams from Oceania, New Zealand returns. Ranked 85th, they were the direct beneficiaries of the new format, which finally granted the Oceania region a guaranteed automatic qualification place without having to play a cross-continental playoff against the South American team.
Which is huge for them.
They defeated New Caledonia to seal their return after a 16-year absence, and they're arriving with one goal, securing their first ever World Cup group stage win.
When you step back and look at the entirety of that 48-team list, it is almost dizzying. The sheer diversity of footballing cultures, the clash of tactical philosophies, and the collision of national histories converging in one massive tournament is hard to fully comprehend.
You know, digesting this 48-team format really feels like attending a massive, sprawling family wedding.
Oh, totally.
You have the core family members who command the room and whom everyone expects to see at the head table. That's your Brazil, your Germany, your Argentina. Then you have the distant cousins who we haven't seen in decades, rolling up to the venue and surprising everyone with how much they've grown. That's your Haiti and your DR Congo.
I love that.
And then you have the plus ones, the guests who are just absolutely thrilled to have an invitation to the open bar, soaking in the majesty of the experience. That's Curacao and Cape Verde.
That is a brilliant analogy. And all 48 of those guests are converging on a North American stage that is fraught with extreme complexities. They are going from the sinking, oxygen-starved heights of the Azteca Stadium down to the subterranean, artificial turf-covered depths of Los Angeles.
It is going to be absolute, unadulterated madness. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. To summarize the sheer magnitude of what you're about to witness over those 39 days, you are watching a tournament where players must navigate billion-dollar, sun-blinded stadiums. They will be battling on shallow trays of temporary grass that threaten their ligaments. They will be pushed to their physiological limits, flying from the cool breezes of Vancouver straight into the 40-degree, energy-sapping heat waves of Monterey.
They will be operating under the immense, unyielding pressure of a $50 billion global betting ecosystem that scrutinizes every misplaced pass. And they will be doing all of this while chasing the immortal, untouchable ghosts of Pelé, Maradona, and Zidane.
The weight of all that history.
And incredibly, the responsibility for writing the next chapter of this epic history might fall into the shoulders of a 17-year-old kid like Gilberto Mora.
It is a phenomenal, terrifying, beautiful setup. I want to enthusiastically thank you for spending your time with us and tuning into the Black Mamba of soccer or football deep dive today. And I have to give one final echoing shout out to Etienne Noumen for flawlessly researching and producing the ultimate comprehensive World Cup prep guide for us.
Absolutely.
Without his curation of these BBC sources, we literally could not have navigated this massive landscape.
The research provided a vital roadmap through what is undoubtedly going to be a very chaotic, highly unpredictable tournament structure.
As we wrap up this special edition, I want to leave you with a lingering, provocative thought to chew on. We started this hour by talking about how this 2026 tournament has completely shattered the usual neat, digestible container of a sporting event.
Right.
With an unprecedented 104 games, extreme, dangerous weather variations across 3 massive countries, and the reality of an 82nd ranked island nation like Curacao going head-to-head with a 4-time absolute juggernaut like Germany. Will this expanded 48-team format dilute the elite, concentrated magic of the World Cup?
That's the big question.
Or, by widening the gates, will it accidentally create the greatest, most chaotic underdog stories in the history of global sports? Keep a close eye on those temporary pitches, enjoy the games when they kick off, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.